What's up, detectives and defectives? Today I'm doing something a little different. Recently, my Death Note video got over 243,000 views as of the time I'm recording this. Not that much in the grand scheme of things, but a lot for me. Before that, my most viewed video had only like 7,000 views. And along with those views came a lot of comments. Mostly positive, but some not. And some of the argumentative ones were just so ridiculous and repeated so many times, I felt like they warranted a response. So, here we are. And I guess spoiler warning for Death Note? I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've already watched my other video, but just to be safe, spoiler warning. So let's start off with a comment that was both the most commonly repeated and by far the stupidest.
It's just an anime, bro.
Yeah, I got this one a lot.
It's just an anime, dude. It's fiction, bro. Anything is possible. You watch a show about a magical notebook that kills people, but you think writing a bunch of names is impossible? LOL.
Ugh, literally hundreds of people made some variation of this comment, and look, I'm sorry, but it's just so stupid. This is easily one of the dumbest things I've heard in my entire life. I'm sorry, really, I'm genuinely not trying to be mean, but this is just so unbelievably stupid. It legit hurts my brain with how dumb it is. The argument here is basically, it's a work of fiction, therefore anything is possible. Well, by that logic, Light should have been able to go Super Saiyan and just destroy the whole dang planet with a Gear 5th Bankai Rasen Shuriken, right? After all, it's an anime, bro. Yeah, see how insanely stupid that sounds? Yes, it's fiction, and yes, it doesn't follow the same rules as the real world. But obviously that doesn't mean that there are no rules at all. Death Note makes it abundantly clear that the only supernatural things in the show are the Shinigami and the Death Note itself. Everything else follows normal, real-world physics and logic. So yes, even in a show where there's a magical notebook that kills people, copying tens of thousands of names perfectly by hand in a foreign language in one night is still impossible. Ugh, let's move on to the next one before I have an aneurysm from how dumb this is. Up next, they could have used a printer or a photocopier. Sure, they could have, but they didn't. They just didn't. Nier literally tells us that Giovanni did it by hand, and even points out that Giovanni used the same type of pen that Mikami used. Also, it's incredibly easy to tell the difference between a printed page versus a handwritten one, even at a brief glance. So yeah, they coulda, but we know that they didn't. The next argument is that they didn't need to make the copy all in one night because they had taken pictures of the notebook weeks ago, so they must have already made a fake notebook back then. Well first, once again they explicitly say that they did copy it all in one night, so suggesting that they didn't need to is just pointless because we know that they did. Second, they only had photos of the fake notebook that Mikami kept in his briefcase, which had different names and dates and pages from the real notebook hidden at the bank. So even if they did already have copies made, those would be copies of the fake notebook and wouldn't match the real one that Mikami was using on that day. Another comment was the suggestion that maybe they had an entire team of people copying the notebook, and that's how they got it all done in one night. They didn't. Again, Nier explicitly states that Giovanni did it all on his own. People, literally just watch the video. All this is already covered. The next common argument was that they didn't need to break into the bank because they had copies of all of Mikami's keys. Now, it is true they had copies of his keys, but they wouldn't be able to get into the bank to use them. Japanese law forbids foreign citizens from opening an account at a Japanese bank unless they have proof of permanent residence, proof of long-term employment, and multiple other documents which we know no one at the SPK had. And since a bank won't let you into the deposit box room unless you're a customer at that bank, the SPK wouldn't have had the opportunity to use the keys they had copied. Some people suggested maybe they used a disguise and impersonated Mikami using the copies of his IDs they had made, but I'll remind you that Mikami was Japanese and all the members of the SPK were white. They all look the same in the show because it's an anime and that's just how everyone is drawn, but the SPK agents were all from America and Nier was from the UK. None of them would ever be able to pass for Japanese, even with all the disguises and makeup and wigs in the world. The next batch of comments was, they were a government agency with lots of contacts and resources. Maybe they knew someone at the bank who was able to let them in, or maybe they got a warrant, or maybe they just walked up and showed their badges and the bank employees let them in. Okay, so many things. First, they used to be government agents. The SPK had been disbanded long before the bank break-in, so they had zero power, authority, contacts, resources, or anything else. Second, even if they hadn't been disbanded, they were American law enforcement officials. This story takes place in Japan, and this was a Japanese bank, so American agents would have no power. Third, even if they hadn't been disbanded, and even if they weren't foreign agents, a warrant takes a lot longer than they had to get, unless you have some sort of emergency situation. And granted, they did have an emergency, stopping Kira, but the government of Japan had long since submitted to Kira and actively supported him. Anyone dumb enough to request a warrant in order to try and catch Kira would have been immediately arrested by the Japanese police and their name and photo posted on the news for Kira to execute. And lastly, the final comment that I saw a lot of was the theory that the SBK had used the Death Note on Mikami and or Light to make it so Mikami wouldn't check the notebook for errors and that Light would confess to being Kira. And this one just... no, absolutely freaking not. Have you watched this show? Have you not seen how Nier is? With his whole speech about how the Death Note is the greatest weapon of mass murder in history, and how Kira is nothing but a common killer, and all this and that and the other thing, it is abundantly clear that he would never, ever use the notebook or approve of anyone else using it. There is absolutely no chance that Nier used the notebook on either of them. And besides, this is a show that explains and tells us everything about every aspect of every character's plan. If Nier had really used the notebook, there would have been a 20-minute internal monologue from him explaining exactly how he used it and why it would benefit him and all the steps he took to make his plan work and everything else. To suggest that he did this and the show just never mentions it, absolutely no chance. Yeah, so I know this video was a little different from what I've done before, but I just got so many of those comments and I was getting tired of responding to each of them individually, so I thought I'd make this video to just respond to them all at once. I'd like to take this chance to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, maybe check out some of my other videos debunking ideas about popular franchises in a similar manner. I think you'll like them. Anyways, this has been So You Think You Know, and now you do know.